What makes a man both a hero and a target? How does someone navigate the thin line between power and vulnerability, loyalty and ambition? The life of Louis Mountbatten, 1st Earl Mountbatten of Burma, forces us to confront these questions. Born into the gilded world of European royalty, he rose to become a cornerstone of British history, a war hero, a trusted advisor to the monarchy, and a modernizer of institutions steeped in tradition. But behind the accolades and the public image lay a story far more intricate, one defined by ambition, controversy, and ultimately a tragic end. From commanding naval forces in the midst of global chaos to guiding the British monarchy through an era of transformation, Mountbatten was a figure who thrived on the complexities of his time. He fought battles on land and sea, brokered compromises in divided nations, and mentored future kings, all while carrying the scars of personal and political conflicts. Yet, his remarkable life came to an abrupt and devastating halt, one that shook not only his family but an entire nation. What made Mountbatten such a towering yet divisive figure? How did his decisions shape the course of history, and at what cost? And most importantly, why does his story continue to resonate decades after his death? Let's explore his tragedy together. Prince Louis of Battenberg, later known as Louis Mountbatten, entered the world on a crisp autumn day in 1900. Born into the illustrious Battenberg family, he was surrounded by opulence, legacy, and high expectations. His father, Prince Louis of Battenberg, was a respected naval officer, and his mother, Princess Victoria, was a granddaughter of Queen Victoria. Their sprawling family tree connected Louis to nearly every royal court in Europe. Yet behind the glittering titles and grand estates, his childhood was a mix of privilege and silent pressures. As a boy, Louis was inquisitive, energetic, and ambitious. He idolized his father, whose life at sea seemed filled with adventure and duty. This admiration planted the seeds of Louis's lifelong passion for the Royal Navy. But growing up in a world governed by strict royal protocols, he was also acutely aware of the weight of expectations. Every handshake, every lesson, every public appearance seemed to carry an unspoken demand. Represent the family with honor. The early 1900s were a golden age for European royalty, but the horizon darkened as political tensions rose across the continent. By the time young Louis was entering adolescence, cracks in the imperial facade began to show. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 signaled the start of World War I, a conflict that would shake Europe to its core and irrevocably alter Louis's life. For the Battenberg family, the war was not just a global catastrophe, it was personal. Despite their British citizenship, their German ancestry placed them under intense scrutiny. Anti-German sentiment swept through Britain like a storm, and suspicion followed anyone with a German-sounding name. Louis's father, then the first Sea Lord of the Royal Navy, became a target of public outcry. Accusations of disloyalty, unfounded but relentless, forced him to resign, an act that shattered his career and left a lingering scar on the family's reputation. To distance themselves from their German heritage, the Battenbergs anglicized their name to Mountbatten, a symbolic gesture meant to reaffirm their loyalty to Britain. For young Louis, the name change was a bitter pill. He later recalled the sting of seeing his proud heritage reduced to a public relations adjustment, a concession to survive in a world increasingly defined by nationalism. Louis was just a teenager when his father's career unraveled, but the event marked him profoundly. He resolved to rebuild the family's name and honor, not just as a member of the Mountbatten dynasty, but as a distinguished officer in his own right. His determination grew with each passing year, bolstered by a sharp intellect and an innate charisma that made him stand out in any crowd. By the war's end in 1918, Louis was a young man with big dreams and an unshakable sense of purpose. His time at Naval College cemented his desire to follow in his father's footsteps, but he also began to develop a personality that was uniquely his own. Where his father had been stoic and reserved, Louis was outgoing, often dazzling those around him with a mix of wit and charm. The interwar period offered him a chance to begin proving himself, but it also brought new challenges. Europe was a patchwork of shifting alliances and uneasy peace, and the Mountbattens, like many royal families, had to navigate this uncertain world with care. For Louis, it was a time of preparation, both for the naval career he was building and for the personal and public battles that lay ahead. As he entered the 1920s, Louis Mountbatten was determined to write a new chapter for his family, one that would reclaim the honor they had lost during the war. Little did he know, the stage was being set for even greater trials and triumphs, ones that would test his resilience, reshape his identity, and ultimately define his legacy. The 1920s brought a sense of optimism to Louis Mountbatten, now a young man navigating the intricacies of both a royal legacy and his burgeoning naval career. His determination to prove himself set him apart among his peers at the Royal Naval College in Dartmouth, where he excelled not only in academics but also in leadership. Louis was not content to simply inherit a reputation. He wanted to earn it. His energy and charm made him a favorite among his colleagues and superiors, and he seemed destined for a life of accomplishment and recognition. As Louis's career in the Royal Navy took its first steady steps, his personal life was taking a dramatic turn. In 1922, at a glittering social event, he met Edwina Ashley, one of the richest heiresses in Britain. Edwina was everything Louis admired: intelligent, vivacious, and unafraid to challenge societal norms. Their courtship was swift and glamorous, culminating in a wedding that drew Britain's elite and cemented Louis's place as both a naval officer and a prominent member of high society. Their marriage, however, was far from conventional. Edwina was fiercely independent, known for her sharp wit and love of adventure. While Louis was deeply dedicated to his naval career, Edwina thrived in a world of parties, travel, and philanthropy. The differences in their personalities created tension, but they also found ways to complement each other. Louis adored Edwina's spirit, even if it sometimes clashed with his more structured life. Their relationship became a partnership built on mutual respect, albeit with its share of challenges. During the interwar years, Louis's naval career advanced steadily. His assignments took him across the globe, from the Mediterranean to the Far East, giving him valuable experience and expanding his understanding of Britain's role on the international stage. He was a quick learner, absorbing lessons not only about naval strategy but also about diplomacy and leadership. These experiences shaped him into a man who could navigate complex situations with both confidence and tact, qualities that would prove crucial in the years to come. At home, life was equally dynamic. Louis and Edwina welcomed two daughters, Patricia and Pamela, who brought a sense of stability to their otherwise whirlwind lives. Despite their busy schedules and the strains of public life, Louis was a devoted father, often finding time to dote on his girls. Family life provided him with a much-needed anchor, balancing the demands of his career and his social obligations. The 1930s were a time of both opportunity and uncertainty for Louis. As the world edged closer to another global conflict, the Royal Navy was undergoing significant changes, and Louis found himself at the forefront of modernization efforts. He was a vocal advocate for innovation, often clashing with traditionalists who resisted change. His forward-thinking approach earned him both admirers and critics, but Louis was never one to shy away from a challenge. He believed that progress was essential, not only for the Navy but for Britain as a whole. His reputation as a progressive thinker extended beyond his military career. Within royal and political circles, Louis became known as someone who could bridge the gap between tradition and modernity. This ability earned him the trust of influential figures, including King George VI, who saw in Louis a man capable of guiding the monarchy through turbulent times. Louis's relationship with the royal family deepened during these years, laying the groundwork for his later role as a mentor to the next generation of royals. Despite his growing influence, Louis was not immune to the tensions of the time. The rise of fascism in Europe and the looming threat of war cast a shadow over his personal and professional life. He was acutely aware of the stakes, both for Britain and for his family. His German ancestry, though largely forgotten by the public, still lingered in his mind, a reminder of the complex identities that shaped his world. As the decade came to a close, Louis found himself at a crossroads. His naval career was flourishing, and his influence within the royal family was growing. Yet the specter of war loomed large, threatening to disrupt everything he had worked for. For Louis, the 1930s had been a time of preparation, an era that tested his resolve and sharpened his skills. But nothing could have prepared him for the trials that lay ahead. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 marked the beginning of a new chapter in Louis's life. The ambitions he had nurtured, the relationships he had built, and the lessons he had learned would all come to bear as he stepped onto the global stage. This was a moment that would define not only his career, but also his legacy. When war broke out in 1939, Louis Mountbatten was thrust into a role that would test his mettle as never before. The naval career he had painstakingly built was now his platform to prove his worth in the face of global catastrophe. The Royal Navy, central to Britain's war effort, became his arena for action and ambition. As a captain of the destroyer HMS Kelly, Mountbatten quickly garnered a reputation for daring leadership and unrelenting determination. The Kelly was a ship like no other, Under Mountbatten's command, it embodied the resilience and resolve of the British spirit. But the ship's history was marked by both heroism and tragedy. Mountbatten's boldness as a commander often bordered on recklessness, and the Kelly became known for its perilous missions in some of the war's most dangerous waters. In 1941, during the Battle of Crete, the Kelly was sunk by enemy forces. The loss was devastating, both personally for Mountbatten and for the men who had served under him. Survivors remembered his composure amidst the chaos, a testament to his ability to inspire confidence, even in the direst circumstances. Despite the setback, Mountbatten's naval career flourished. His charisma, intelligence, and connections within the royal family made him a natural choice for higher command. By 1943, he had risen to the position of the Supreme Allied Commander, Southeast Asia Command, a role that placed him in charge of one of the most challenging theaters of the war. This promotion was not without controversy. Critics questioned whether his rapid ascent was due to merit or privilege, but Mountbatten was determined to prove himself worthy of the responsibility. Southeast Asia presented a host of difficulties: dense jungles, oppressive heat, and an enemy entrenched in fortified positions. Mountbatten approached these challenges with characteristic energy, focusing on coordination and morale. His leadership was instrumental in campaigns such as the liberation of Burma, a crucial victory for the Allies. Yet not all his decisions were universally lauded. Some of his strategies were criticized for their high human cost, and he was not immune to the tensions that arose between Allied forces under his command. Throughout the war, Mountbatten maintained a tireless schedule, traveling across the region to visit troops, liaise with Allied leaders, and oversee operations. His ability to connect with soldiers on a personal level set him apart. He was known to share meals with servicemen, listen to their concerns, and boost their spirits with his quick wit and unwavering optimism. To many, he embodied the ideal of a wartime leader, approachable yet authoritative. While Mountbatten's military career reached new heights, his personal life remained a source of complexity. Edwina, his wife, had thrown herself into war work, traveling to remote and dangerous locations to provide aid and support to soldiers and civilians alike. Their marriage, already unconventional, became even more so during the war years. Both pursued their separate paths with mutual respect, though their bond evolved into more of a partnership than a traditional romantic relationship. By the end of the war in 1945, Mountbatten was hailed as a hero, celebrated for his contributions to the Allied victory. However, the conclusion of hostilities brought new challenges. The British Empire was undergoing a profound transformation, and Mountbatten found himself at the center of one of its most significant chapters. In 1947, he was appointed as the last Viceroy of India, tasked with overseeing the transition of British India to independence. The role of Viceroy was both an honor and a burden. India was a nation on the brink, its people yearning for freedom, but divided by deep religious and political tensions. Mountbatten arrived in New Delhi with a clear mission: to manage the transfer of power while minimizing violence. His charm and diplomatic skills won him admirers among Indian leaders, including Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. Yet, the task before him was monumental. Partition, the division of India into two separate nations, India and Pakistan, became one of the defining aspects of Mountbatten's tenure. The decision was fraught with controversy, and the aftermath was devastating. Millions were displaced, and communal violence erupted on an unprecedented scale. Mountbatten later expressed deep regret over the suffering caused by partition, though opinions about his role remain divided. Some argue that his swift timeline for independence exacerbated tensions, while others contend that he was working within the constraints of an impossible situation. As Mountbatten left India in 1948, his legacy as viceroy was already the subject of debate. He returned to Britain a man shaped by the weight of history, his experiences during the war, and in India, leaving an indelible mark on his character. He was celebrated as a statesman and a leader, but the complexities of his choices and their consequences continued to follow him. The post-war years offered Mountbatten a new chapter, one that would see him transition from a wartime hero and colonial administrator to an elder statesman and trusted advisor to the monarchy. Yet, even as he embraced this role, the shadows of the past and the challenges of the future awaited him. As the 1950s unfolded, Louis Mountbatten's life entered a phase of reinvention. The war was over, and his role as Viceroy of India had come to an end. But his influence in Britain and its monarchy only grew. By now he had become one of the most recognizable figures in the country, a man whose blend of military achievement, royal lineage, and charismatic charm made him a natural choice for roles that required both public appeal and political savvy. Mountbatten's relationship with the royal family deepened during this period, particularly with his nephew Prince Philip and his grandnephew Prince Charles. He had long been a guiding force for Prince Philip, mentoring him through his early years and encouraging his marriage to Princess Elizabeth, the future queen. Mountbatten's advice carried weight, and his proximity to the throne afforded him unparalleled access to the inner workings of the monarchy. As Queen Elizabeth II ascended the throne in 1952, Mountbatten positioned himself as a trusted advisor. He believed deeply in the modernization of the monarchy, often urging the royal family to adapt to the changing times. His influence on Prince Charles in particular was profound. Charles saw Mountbatten not just as a mentor but as a surrogate father figure, someone who provided guidance and support during moments of personal and public uncertainty. Meanwhile, Mountbatten continued his naval career, becoming the first Sea Lord in 1955, a role that echoed the position his father had held decades earlier. It was a crowning achievement, symbolizing his commitment to rebuilding the Mountbatten name and legacy. Under his leadership, the Royal Navy underwent significant modernization, reflecting Mountbatten's forward-thinking approach. He championed the use of new technologies and strategies, ensuring that Britain's naval forces remained competitive in an evolving global landscape. Despite his professional successes, Mountbatten's personal life remained as intricate as ever. His marriage to Edwina had evolved into a partnership built on mutual understanding, but it was clear to those around them that their lives had diverged in many ways. Edwina's humanitarian work had become her primary focus, and she traveled extensively, often to areas affected by poverty and conflict. Mountbatten admired her dedication, even if it meant long periods of separation. Their bond, however unconventional, was one of mutual respect and shared history. In 1960, Edwina passed away unexpectedly during a trip to Borneo, leaving Mountbatten devastated. Her death marked the end of an era in his life, a chapter defined by their complex, often extraordinary relationship. Mountbatten paid tribute to her legacy by continuing to support the causes she cared about, ensuring her memory endured. As the 1960s progressed, Mountbatten's role as a statesman and public figure took center stage. He became a frequent presence at official events, offering his insights on matters of national and international importance. His charisma and knack for diplomacy made him a valuable asset to both the monarchy and the government. Yet his growing public profile also attracted scrutiny. Critics accused him of seeking the spotlight, while some in political circles questioned his influence on royal and governmental affairs. Despite these challenges, Mountbatten's commitment to public service never wavered. He used his platform to advocate for causes he believed in, from the preservation of Britain's naval heritage to the promotion of international cooperation. His speeches, often delivered with a mix of wit and gravitas, resonated with audiences and reinforced his reputation as one of the country's most respected figures. By the late 1960s, Mountbatten had become a symbol of continuity in a rapidly changing world. His ability to navigate the complexities of modern life while maintaining a connection to tradition endeared him to many. Yet, even as he thrived in his role as an elder statesman, the world around him continued to evolve, presenting new challenges and opportunities. In the twilight of his career, Mountbatten began to reflect more deeply on his legacy. He had witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the devastation of war, and the challenges of a world in transition. Through it all, he had remained steadfast in his commitment to service, a principle that had guided him from his earliest days in the Royal Navy to his position as one of the most influential figures in British public life. But Mountbatten was not one to rest on his laurels. Even in his later years, he remained active, dedicating himself to mentoring the younger generation of royals and shaping the future of the monarchy. His advice to Prince Charles in particular was instrumental in preparing the young prince for the responsibilities that lay ahead. Mountbatten's belief in the importance of adaptability and innovation echoed throughout his conversations with Charles, leaving a lasting impression on the future king. The 1970s brought new challenges and a growing sense of unease. Mountbatten was acutely aware of the tensions brewing in Northern Ireland, where the Troubles had escalated into a full-blown conflict. As a prominent public figure and a symbol of British authority, he understood the risks associated with his high profile. Yet he remained resolute, continuing his work despite the dangers that loomed. As he entered the final years of his life, Mountbatten's focus shifted toward consolidating his legacy. He knew that his name would be remembered not just for his accomplishments, but also for the impact he had on the lives of those around him. For Mountbatten, legacy was not merely about titles or achievements. It was about the principles he had upheld and the relationships he had nurtured. By the late 1970s, Louis Mountbatten had become a towering figure in British history, a man whose life spanned 2 world wars, the fall of empires, and the transformation of the British monarchy. Yet, even with decades of service behind him, he continued to be active, committed to his work, and deeply involved in the lives of his family. However, the mounting conflict in Northern Ireland, known as the Troubles, cast an ominous shadow over his final years. Mountbatten was aware of the risks he faced. His high-profile status, combined with his connections to the British establishment, made him a target for groups like the Irish Republican Army, IRA, who sought to challenge Britain's presence in Northern Ireland. Despite this, Mountbatten refused to let fear dictate his actions. He continued to spend summers at Classybon Castle, his beloved retreat in County Sligo, Ireland, a place he cherished for its tranquility and its ties to his late wife, Edwina. On the morning of August 27, 1979, Mountbatten and his family set out on a seemingly ordinary boat trip along the coast. The day was clear, the waters calm, and the group was in high spirits. Mountbatten's grandson Nicholas, his daughter Patricia, and several others joined him on board the Shadow V, the small fishing boat he often used during his stays at Classybon. Unbeknownst to them, the IRA had planted a bomb on the vessel the night before. As the boat moved out to sea, the explosion tore through the air. The force of the blast was devastating, destroying the Shadow V and sending its passengers into the water. Mountbatten, along with Nicholas and 2 others, was killed instantly. Survivors recalled the chaos and horror of that moment, the sound of the explosion, the smoke, and the realization that this peaceful day had turned into a nightmare. News of Mountbatten's assassination spread quickly, shocking the nation and the world. For many, his death was not just a personal tragedy, but a stark reminder of the escalating violence in Northern Ireland. The IRA later claimed responsibility, stating that Mountbatten had been a legitimate target due to his role as a symbol of British rule. Their statement did little to lessen the heartbreak felt by his family, friends, and the public. In the days following his death, tributes poured in from around the globe. Mountbatten was remembered as a statesman, a war hero, and a mentor to the royal family. Prince Charles, who had been especially close to him, spoke movingly of his loss, describing Mountbatten as the grandfather I never had. His death left a void that could not be filled, particularly for the young prince who had relied on his guidance during some of the most formative years of his life. The funeral, held at Westminster Abbey, was a solemn occasion, attended by royalty, dignitaries, and representatives from across the world. It was a fitting tribute to a man whose life had been so deeply intertwined with the history of the 20th century. Yet amidst the grandeur of the ceremony, there was an undeniable sense of personal loss, a recognition that Mountbatten's absence would be felt not only by his family, but by the nation he had served so loyally. Even in death, Mountbatten's legacy continued to spark both admiration and debate. He was a man of contradictions, a progressive thinker who upheld traditional values, a military leader who navigated the complexities of diplomacy, and a royal who sought to modernize the monarchy. His impact on the royal family, particularly through his mentorship of Prince Charles, left an indelible mark, shaping the future of the institution he had worked so hard to support. For those who knew him personally, Mountbatten's legacy was deeply human. He was remembered not just for his public achievements, but for his warmth, his humor, and his unwavering dedication to the people he cared about. His relationships, whether with his family, his colleagues, or the soldiers who served under him, were marked by a genuine commitment to understanding and supporting others. This, perhaps more than anything else, defined the man he was. In the years following his death, Mountbatten's influence continued to resonate. His name became synonymous with leadership, resilience, and service, qualities that had defined his life from beginning to end. Monuments were erected in his honor, and his contributions to the British Navy and the monarchy were celebrated in countless ways. Yet for those closest to him, his greatest legacy was the example he set, a life lived with purpose, passion, and an unyielding belief in the power of service. The tragedy of his assassination remains a poignant chapter in British history, a reminder of the human cost of political conflict. But Louis Mountbatten's story is more than one of loss. It is a testament to the resilience of a man who, despite facing immense challenges, refused to be defined by them. His life, marked by triumphs and trials alike, continues to inspire, offering a glimpse into what it means to serve with dignity and determination. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.